Now, come here, you fluffball. Come here. Yes, I'm not able to go live until I finish brushing you because you've got to have your seeds taken care of. Because someone went into a seedy bush, didn't they? Went into a right seedy bush. Anyone think you're a seedy poodle? Currently, you are a very seedy poodle. Oh, there you go, come off. Oh, now I've got tail. Oh. Right, your bad ear. Can I get to your bad ear? Will you allow me to do your bad ear? I hold it very gently and firmly. Will you allow me to do it? Will you allow me to do your bad ear? You're a good boy. Oh. Yeah, there you go. There you go, get brushed. And once I finish brushing you, then we'll go live. Be nice to the people. Don't keep extorting them for biscuits. It's not fair. You get plenty. They think we starve you apart from the treats you get given when you when they say PT. But no, you get plenty of food. I know. You've got all the burnt toast this morning, as well as your kibble, as well as your chicken breast. And plenty of food. Oh, just the way you like it. Oh, good Lord. Seriously, you have a lovely coat. Do you think I could turn it into a coat? Probably could. Poodle ball coat. Right. You gonna let me go for have the ear that's bad or not? See, it's not hurting. Just doing it gently, not hurting, is it? Not hurting at all. Not hurting. Oh. You okay, Big Fluff? You good boy. You good boy. Yes, you good boy. There we go. A little bit of that ear done. A little bit of that ear done. A little bit of that ear done. Yes, we are. You are a very good boy. You are a very, very good boy. You are a very good boy. Yes, you are. I know it hurts. You're a good boy. You're a good boy. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I know it hurts. I've got to do it though, because it's got to be neat. Because otherwise it's going to get matted and all horrible, and you end up having to get it shaved, and you won't like it because you'll be lopsided, and you'll be complaining about that to me for weeks. And don't pretend you wouldn't, because you will. Oh, good Lord, it's already started, hasn't it? Okay, yeah, well, we've almost finished. I'll apologise to people. Oh, sorry, boyo. I know. Not much more to it. I know, not much more. Okay, we'll call that done. We'll call that done for today. But I am going to get so told off by your groomers for that ear. I really am. And I'm going to go... Well, in the nicest way, my poor dog has been through absolute HE double hoppy sticks with that ear. Right, a can of iron brew, I think. Can of iron brew. And then it is. Hello to the world. It is time to discuss the Vlieter incident. Hello. And... Well, yeah, I have a very well-behaved poodle who's just... I had it set up and I didn't realise it would auto-start. I thought I had slightly longer. So I do apologise for that. I thought I had slightly longer. And I thought I was just, able to get away with doing his ears quickly. So I do apologise for that. I do. How are we all doing today? How is everyone doing? Hello, Wade, in Oklahoma. I think we need to get another Bicky bag out, don't we? This one is finished off. Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to need to do something about that ear, aren't I? This ear does need work. Poor fluffy dog. Poor woolly beast. Hello, everyone. So I'll check this is working on YouTube. Hello. Hello. Yeah, basically, you hear a howl, you know he wasn't happy. Yeah, that's basically life. That's life for the poodle. And get Twitch up. Make sure I'm muted in it. Log in on Twitch. Sorry about that. It takes... See, the trouble is in my head, it still takes 25 minutes to brush him. But the trouble is with the pain in his ear, it takes more like half an hour, 40 minutes. And I'd taken him for a walk and got back and was brushing him after I got back. Because that's what you do. You don't brush them before you take them for a walk, because there's absolutely no point. They just get covered in seeds. They just get covered in seeds. Because my dog is mildly stupid. Mildly stupid. I love him dearly, but he knows that getting covered in seeds leads him to getting everything else. But, you know, that's life. Okay, only IKB4472 doesn't have sound. That's good. That is very good. Sorry to hear about that, Thomas. Hope everyone's okay. Hope everyone's good. Right, and today we're talking about the Vlieter incident. Now, the Vlieter incident, before anyone gets too confused, is what happens when the Dutch go really Dutch. And I mean really, really Dutch. You used to be talking about the fact that if the Dutch actually decide to do a major warship procurement program, you need to watch out, because that means a large war is about to break out. And it'll break out before the program is between them deciding to do the program and them deciding what to actually get for the program. It will break out. Well, what can I say about the Batavian Republic? The Batavian Republic are probably the best example of how not to run a government. No, there's a problem in the Dutch system. In that both sides of their politics, whether they're the Orangists or the Republicans, fundamentally believe that if they're in charge because they must be popular and everyone loves them. That's, of course, a complete and utter twaddle. That has never been true at all in the history of mankind. No one has ever been that successful. And the Vlieter incident is all about politics. And for those of you who are still under the appearance, the idea that... How do I put this politely? Those of you still under the idea that the worst series of mistakes and stupid things are what happened to the Russian second and third Russian Pacific squadrons, I am about to sorely disappoint you. Because this one doesn't even get a battle. This one doesn't even get a battle. Today's video is not about a battle. It's entirely about leadership, but it's not about a battle. There is virtually no fighting involved in this at all, not from a naval perspective. Virtually no fighting at all. So, yeah, this is not probably going to be one of my more popular videos, because it's about a random event in 1799. But it's a cool event in 1799. Okay, right then. I am so glad today's one. And by the way, note from now on, I will not be displaying the combined chat on the side of the screen, because Twitch, etc. don't seem to like that. So I won't be doing that from now on. But I'm also so glad I'm not doing that today, because my own admins are playing games in the Twitch chat. I mean, seriously. I am looking at you all. Staring at 3 iron brew cases. Yes. The poodle's food is next to the iron brew case, so the important things he needs to guard are right together. His food and the iron brew. So, we're talking about the War of the Second Coalition, which I've spoken about before, and which next week there's going to be a video on the War of the First Coalition, finally, because it's the Battle of Camperdown.
We're going to be talking about the Battle of Camperdown. And we're talking about, of course, Admiral Duncan and his wonderful leadership style. And that's going to be a fun video. It is. But the War of the Second Coalition is famous for not having many naval battles in it, realistically. And yeah, it doesn't have many naval battles in it. It really doesn't. Now, the thing about having those naval battles, not having many naval battles in it, is why doesn't it? One of the reasons is that the Dutch threat is dealt with rather early on in the war. Rather early on in the war. And it's dealt with thanks to the Dutch themselves being stupid. We're going to be talking about this repeatedly. But the War of the Second Coalition is, like all the coalition wars, it's basically an ongoing series of wars between revolutionary France and everyone else. Everyone else. And that's a problem. It's a problem. France at this point was probably the most powerful military nation in the world. Okay? Definitely has probably the best army of anyone in the world this time. And yet, they pick a fight with pretty much everyone. And they get ground down and they lose. Yes, the Royal Navy is pretty much the best navy in the world. But this is a timely lesson for even people today. It's a problem. And pretty much one of the first things the French had done was set up the Batavian Republic. Storm into the Netherlands, kick out the Orangists, who were allied with the British, etc., and set up the people who were pro-French. And set it up. And help it reign and rule. And, well, that gave them an ally, in theory. It was an interesting ally. It was a very problematic ally in so many ways. It really was an ally who was more annoying than anything else, because the Batavian Republic, what can I say? William V of Orange was not as popular as he imagined. He believed he was this great, glorious leader who was amazing. You have to remember, the stadtholder is not king. Okay? Stadtholder is first citizen by hereditary right, not king. There is a difference. One is the sovereign of the state, one is the representative of the sovereign state. Okay? There is a difference. Now, occasionally, depending on who you are, you will cosplay that the stadtholder is effectively is the king and treat him as such. Certainly, the British, for various reasons, sensible reasons, did so. They did this because it was sensible. It worked well. Thank you, Wade, for the memberships. But the reality was, it was always more of a political tussle. And the different admiralties and the different organisations within the Netherlands mean that it is a permanent coalition of arguing compadres rather than anything else. In fact, they spend more time arguing with each other than they do actually working on a coherent plan. There is a reason why the Netherlands falls from power as much as it does, despite being a massive trading nation with a huge mercantile force, dependent upon trade to have the money to be able to support and field the army they need to defend their borders in a Europe that was the Europe that was. They might want to do all these things, but they will not agree on how to. And usually, the advantage you can do is while they're taking their time deciding, you act. Getting inside the Dutch decision loop is amazingly easy. It is incredibly easy, because they will spend forever debating what to do, right up until the point someone has already done the thing to them. They are thinking of debating what to do about it to stop them being done. But still, they are good people. They are very smart people, and they're very hard-working people. And they are excellent sailors. They really are. And this means that, as far as everyone else is concerned, they really do care about the Batavian Republic. Now, the other problem you have is that France is at an all-time low in terms of naval strength. They might have the ships. They might still have the ships, yes, but they don't necessarily have what they need to use the ships, which are experienced officers and experienced NCOs. And that's a problem for them. It's a tremendous problem for them. It's one of the reasons why they keep suffering when they're fighting the Royal Navy. Because you see, first there was Louis XIV, and he's getting rid of the Huguenot admirals. Why? Because the Huguenots were Protestants. Why? Because Louis XIV wanted to make a point and do some easy politics. So he got rid of the Huguenot officers. Unfortunately, quite a lot of the Huguenot officers went to three places. Russia, they could get employment there. Britain, again, the Royal Navy is very good at taking on officers who are skilled naval officers and finding them employment, especially officers who've been disowned and disinherited by their own country, so are stateless, and now are really going to be loyal to whoever gives their family home. And three, this is why you get a whole lot of Huguenots ending up in America. And this is why when you start to look at some of the families who were involved in the founding of the American Navy, you start looking at them going, wow, there's an awful lot of French Protestants there. There were. Occasionally they anglicize their names to make their lives a little easier, but you can usually spot them. Now, with that loss, you'd lost approximately a third to 30 to 40% of your career naval officers. That's how bad cutting the Huguenots out from the Navy was. Because, you see, the army was traditionally very Catholic, so the Huguenots couldn't join there, and they didn't like having Huguenot troops, because they would face discrimination. So they joined the Navy, where skill was required more than noblesse oblige. And so they've been promoted. Well, when it comes to losing them, that's a huge loss in the institutional memory of the French Navy. It then gets worse. The revolution comes along. And as I've said before, every officer who had mild promise, capability, or skill was either fled, was executed, or was imprisoned. Pretty much to a man. This is just another body blow. So the Bavarian Republic, with its love for trees of liberty, which die, like all the trees of liberty do. This is one of the really fun things, okay, the trees of liberty. They rip up trees and they plant them in places. And they don't apply any of the policies that have been used for years in terms of moving trees properly, in terms of protecting their root bundle, all those things. None of that, because that's all bourgeoisie, that's all nobles. Those people who did that were all people who worked for great noble estates and worked for the snobs, and they've been, well, executed, quite a lot of them. And so they basically, the trees are planted and they are literally dropped in, and it's presumed they're going to survive. We'll water them. Do you fertilise them? Possibly, possibly not. And then you've got also people actively trying to kill the trees of liberty because they're the symbol of the Batavian, the symbol of whether they're in France or in Netherlands or wherever they're planted, of the other side. And these trees of liberty keep dying. It's quite funny, but no. Bavarian Republic puts through a constitution, organises itself, everything, but basically what it is another, like Spain will be, France seeking replacements for the naval corps they've lost. And that's a problem for the British. But don't worry. Don't worry, the British have an ally in all this, and it's the Bavarian Republic itself, because, you see, whilst in the First Coalition War, it ended up with the Battle of Camperdown, where Admiral Duncan is nasty. He's nasty. In the Second War, well, things go from bad to worse. You see, during the fall of the Netherlands in 1795, the Den Helder Squadron had actually been captured by a regiment of French Hussars. Let's think about this. Times in history that ships have been caught by enemy cavalry. The Swedes by the Russians, the Dutch by the French. There are others, I'm sure, but not that many. There are more, but I'm not that sure how many. I don't think there are that many. I really aren't. And this Den Helder Squadron was a key part of the Dutch fleet. And losing them was one of the reasons why the Netherlands falls as quickly as it does, because we've lost a large chunk of our navy. It's been taken. A large chunk of our independence. A large chunk of the cornerstone of our Orangist officers have been lost. Now, if you think about that, when we start talking about this fall of the Netherlands, and we start talking about the Orangists, one of the funniest things is that when Netherlands falls, the Orangist officers resign from the Navy when they become the Bavarian Republic, okay? They support the Stadtholder. They no longer wish to serve. This leaves the Bavarian Republic critically short of officers. And then the Stadtholder lets it be known, no, you should serve the Netherlands. You should consider serving the Dutch and protecting the Dutch nation. The Bavarian Republic is so short of officers, they let them join back in. Anyone want to say there is some things going on here which are slightly stupid? Okay? Ships getting caught in ice, getting captured by cavalry, that's annoying. It shouldn't happen, but if you're going to be caught out, you're at least being caught out in January. Life happens, we'll deal with that. That's not necessarily a mistake. But anyone think allowing back officers and putting them in senior positions on ships who literally resigned in protest at your government is a good idea? Anyone? Knight's already in with, yes, there's a lot of stupid going on. Traitors being willingly let in. Yeah, the trouble is they're not traitors. This is the interesting thing. They're a different fraction of Dutch. This is the joy. They're traitors to the Bavarian Republic. They're not traitors to the Netherlands. They are patriots to the Netherlands. This is the fun thing. Both sides think they're being patriots to the Netherlands. That's the other really fun thing about Bavarian Republic, because it's formed by a lot of the Republican Dutch. None of them can really agree on what kind of republic they're trying to take it back to. They all have this image of what Netherlands was like before there was a Stadtholder. And none of them are accurate. None of these memories are accurate. Now, the thing is, not long after that you'd lost, the fleet had been captured at Den Helder, and then the Bavarian Republic had been set up. The British go and take the Cape Colony. Okay? They go and take it. Now, why does this matter here? Well, the Cape Colony was a key Dutch colony. It really was. But the British literally turned up and took it in 1795. Basically, when the Dutch fall, by March 1795, there is an expeditionary force sailing for Cape Colony. Okay? Under the command of Vice Admiral Sir George Ethelston, with reinforcements following. By August 1795, after conducting, well, what were considered fruitless negotiations, they took it. They took it. By the way, there's the wonderful General Allard Clarke. Sir Allard Clarke arrives. Yes, he does have the correct spelling of Clarke. With reinforcements in September. And that's it. It's been taken. However, the Bavarian Republic starts debating, oh, hang on, the Cape Colony could be exposed. We should reinforce it. Almost as soon as they come to being, they start doing it. And, well, they finally dispatch a force in February 1796. In February 1796. The colony had fallen in September 1795. The British had dispatched the force in March 1795. So basically, they're not quite a year later. Well, the British desire to go yoink on the Cape Colony is quite simple. They don't want the French having the Cape Colony as a base to attack India and disrupt British trade with India. The British were happy to have the Dutch there because the Dutch were allies. But if the Dutch are no longer allies, they're not happy to have anyone there. Now, the really fun thing is the admiral in charge, and he is Schuitbignacht Engelbert Lucas. Now, Schuitbignacht, if you don't know what that means sheriff by night, and is the Dutch designation for a rear admiral. And basically means the person in charge at night. Schuitbignacht. Third in command, you're in charge at night. It's not a premiere, Jacob. It's a live. The premiere is in several weeks' time, in August the 30th, at some point. And, well, you know, they have some fun. They're sailing. They manage to avoid getting into a fight with Rear Admiral Thomas Pringle, because he decides that their force is actually stronger than him. And after all, they are bringing 3 ships of the line, 2 frigates, 3 sloops, and 6 large merchant vessels with them. They are. And, you know, they first end up sailing to Las Palmas. And then they sail to Praia on Cape Verde. Before continuing in the direction of the Brazilian coast. and then hoping to use trade winds to get them to the Cape Colony. Now, the thing is, they had not managed to get any information about the British taking South Africa yet. And they're at the 26th of July, but they are taking a very long route down. A very long route down. Thanks for sending out memberships, Wade. Unfortunately for Lucas, is that even worse than all this, him taking his own time, is that the British had spotted the preparations. They did have a full information breakdown of what was happening, what the Dutch were up to, and they'd sent HMS Carrisford to the Cape Colony as a warning. She'd arrived there in April. But also, when they got there, they found that the accounts of the mission had already reached Ethelstone, and Ethelstone had made sure he was in space in Cape Colony by May. So, eventually, when the expeditionary force reaches the South African coast on the 26th of July, the British are not only ensconced, they're well armed, well prepared, and going, "Where are the Dutch? They're late, as usual." Have they been having a good schmuck? We don't know where they are. They're just taking their freaking time. They're off having a nice long voyage. And you might be wondering, well, hang on, surely they're taking the most efficient route possible, so surely they'd have been on the same route as Carrisford. Carrisford sails straight down the African coast. Goes absolutely maxing out as far as she can go, every bit of wind, every bit of effort she can get. And the Dutch have gone all the way across the Atlantic to go back. If they were trying to go any slower, they couldn't have if they were trying. You know, maybe they were trying to pretend they were going to a different place, but they are still taking so long. They've been fully reinforced. They've got reinforcements out of India. They've got reinforcement. They've got 8 ships of the line and 7 other vessels under Elphinston's command at that point, plus a garrison of 9,400 troops. So what are the odds that the Engelbert Lucas is carrying anywhere significant enough to do anything? Yes, their phrases they were trying to avoid the doldrums, but honestly, again, Paul Amos, the fact is, they've added so much longer onto their way, they'd almost be better trying to push through the doldrums. Now, the Batavian forces, they were worried they might be sailing for East Indies, they might be trying to bypass the Cape Colony altogether. And so Ethelstan actually takes his fleet out to sea to search for them. He sails southwest from False Bay, searching for Lucas. Fierce storm calls up and it actually causes Monarch to lose her main mast, which is annoying, and Ruby to get some flooding. They then return to Simon's Bay on the 12th of August. They learn that Lucas's force is laying at anchor to the north. And then a storm sweeps the bay, and his ships are damaged. But Ethelstan still gets them out. Ethelstan had actually arrived 26th of July, as said. His ships hadn't decided to land for months. He had supplies of drinking water running low, and his crews were suffering from scurvy. So he decided to find a place where they could encamp ashore to help them recover. He even removed sails from his ships to help with their repairs, and that of course has the other effect of rendering his ships temporarily immobile. Does anyone think this guy is having good ideas? Anyone think Engelbert Lucas should be anywhere near in charge of this force? Let's see, he could be facing superior British force, he's taken his sails off his ships. Yes, his men need to recover ashore. Yes, that is a priority. But surely there's got to be another option. No, Paul, that it wasn't tongue-in-cheek. It was actually it's the excuse they give it. They were trying to avoid the doldrums. It's actually the excuse they give. They went that far because to try and avoid them. And then, well, Lucas is warned by a servant of a Dutch colonist that the British force was present and that the settler population would not assist in an attack on the British. The settler population found the British very nice overlords. They spent a lot of money. They were connecting them to all sorts of fun trading opportunities. They were making them rich. And so, Lucas, on the 9th of August, after he hears this, holds a council of war. Now, this council of war, with occasional stops for food and sleep, apparently goes on to the 16th of August, because that's when they finally make the decision to sail for Ile-de-France. But Lucas couldn't leave yet because his sick men were still ashore. Unfortunately, this all gives Ethelstan time to repair his fleet very nicely. And very quickly, the Bavarian force find themselves on the 16th of August with all 8 of the ships of the line and frigates and everything else Ethelstan could gather sitting off the bay, blockading them in. Ethelstan sends a letter demanding Lucas surrender. Lucas refuses, upon his honour. Ethelstan leads his fleet into the bay in line of battle and brought the line to anchor at close gunshot range to Lucas's ships. Doesn't fire. At this point, Lucas realises that there is, and I kid you not, 8 ships of the line, a frigate and 5 sloops to face off against his 3 ships of the line, his 2 frigates, 3 sloops and 6 merchant ships. In simple terms, every single one of his warships is facing off against a ship of the line. And his merchant ships each have a frigate or a sloop opposite them. And that's a problem. Because whilst his 3 ships of the line can probably hold their own in a fight, the odds are that those 2 frigates and 3 sloops will be knocked out so quickly that it will very quickly turn into 8 on 3. Which will probably be translated by the British into 6 on 1 and 1 on 1 for 2 others, then 7 on 1 and then 8 on 1. Because that's how the British roll. So Lucas at this point decides, you know what, I think I'll throw up the flag of truce. And Ethelstan granted it to allow Lucas to consult his captains, but demanded that the Batavian ships would not be damaged by their crews. Lucas gave his word of honour that they wouldn't be. They then held a council of war, and they wanted capitulation on terms should be sought. The terms proposed: the Bavarian officers should be allowed to go home on two of the Bavarian frigates, designated as cartel ships. Ethelstan goes, nope. He offered to release the other officers eventually, if given their parole, but he wasn't letting them take cartel ships home. By the way, cartel ships were literally when you allowed a ship to basically take prisoners home, and rather than taking them prisoner, you designated it a cartel ship, a treaty ship. It's a humanitarian vessel on voyage. And by 2300 hours, with his crews in what could best be described as open and complete rebellion, Lucas agrees to the terms dictated. And it is, for want of a better word, an unconditional surrender. Next morning, it's agreed. They have a Bavarian parliamentarian, Captain Clarke, as well as Ethelstan, sign it. Lucas signed a capitulation that afternoon. And so the British get a 66-gun ship of the line, the Dordrecht. They get the Revolutionary, 66-gun ship of the line. The Tromp, a 54-gun ship of the line. So basically 2 third rates and a 4th rate. And they get 2 frigates, thank you very much. They get 3 sloops, very nice. And they get some East Indiamen. So when you realise that, and this is possibly some slight annoyance for the front. This is why the British have a history of having HMS Tromp in the Royal Navy. But anyway, leaving that to one side. It's when you realise that the Dutch were bringing about 1,000 soldiers, it seems. Maybe as many as 1,200 soldiers to try and reinforce the Cape Colony. And the British have a garrison there of nearly 10,000. It's kind of a case of, oh, that's cute. You brought a battalion to play in a war. How nice of you. Are you playing at this? It's also quite worrying when you realise, the Dutch ships versus the British ships, because the British fleet was a Monarch and Tremendous, both 74s. Okay, so they take on Dordrecht and Revolutionary, which are only 66s. The rest of the ships of the line are mostly third-rate 64s, which is not going to be good for any of the other ships. The British do have a fourth-rate Jupiter, which is 50 guns, which I suppose would probably find itself fighting, I don't know, a sloop. The frigate's the 36-gun HMS Crescent. Now, one of the things you might want to know is that one of the ships, the sloop, HMS Moselle, was under the command of a Captain Charles Brisbane. Just putting it out there, just in case anyone knows what place might be named for him. You will get no points, but a lot of kudos if you can guess which city in the world is named for Charles Brisbane. I'd be really surprised if you get it. It's a really hard one to figure out. Really hard one. Now, this means that the Dutch have lost 3 ships of the line. Okay? And for some reason, the Dutch Navy, Navy of the Bavarian Republic's morale is quite terrible at this point. Can't think why. So let's look at the Dan Helder squadron at this point and its commander. Its commander is Schubernacht Samuel Story. Now at this point, you'd be really wanting someone who was a strong leader, a powerful leader, a capable leader, someone who is going to inspire the sailors under his command, who's going to give the officers their desires, and make them feel passionate about the Bavarian Republic, make them feel passionate fighting for their nation. What they instead get is the guy who is remembered by many as being the person who abandoned the Winter and caused the centre to collapse at the Battle of Camperdown. And yes, he had a good reason. Yes, he did. But for some reason, people don't really like him. Can't think why. It's so sad, the Samuel Story. So sad. It is. And it's one of those things which, as said, just almost consistently gets worse in the Bavarian Republic. It does. They have a very limited pool they can draw from. They really do. And Story is not one of the better options they can draw from. He probably is a nice man. He's certainly a working man. But his service can be marred by great deeds. Shoo. Shot? Oh, Shotbenacht. I always thought it was Shootbenacht. Shootbenacht. Bottom of the pool, how do I put this politely? Bottom of the pool, he joins the Admiralty of Rotterdam in 1770, entering the Dutch States Navy. On 5th of July 1774, he became a lieutenant, serving aboard the Orange Eel. His first command in 1781 was the 36-gun frigate Jason, and he was appointed captain of the 40-gun frigate Paulus in 1793. By 1793, he is 41 years old. So by the time he gets to what would be a post-command, something which posted, probably, well, I suppose the 1781, the frigate Jason, he probably would have as well. So, he is 29 years old when he gets his first proper command, and he is 41 years old when he gets his second proper command. And it's during 1795, 1794-95, the winter of that year, his commanding officer, Rear Admiral Peter Melville van Cambe, appoints him commander of the naval base and squadron on the Meuse River. That's when the armies of the French Republic invade the Netherlands. The Commander-in-Chief of the Dutch Navy at the time, Lieutenant Admiral Jan Hendrik van Kinsberg, orders Story to offer no resistance. So, he goes a little bit further than this. He not only doesn't offer any resistance, to make sure he secured the base for the Bavarian Republic, he releases in arms the 600 French prisoners of war he has incarcerated on his base. So he's certainly loyal to the Bavarian Republic. Doesn't mean he's particularly popular with the Dutch Navy. As a reward for this, in February 1795, new government appoints him commissioner charged with inventorying ships and naval installations, which of course have been neglected horrendously by the previous government. The commission then presents its report on 27th of May, 1795, and they concluded that, of course, the Navy was in a deplorable state, all thanks to the previous government, not due to the fact that every time the previous government had tried to do anything, there'd been endless debates in the States General, but the fact that then they concluded, of course, they were going to do an ambitious program of naval construction, starting in 1796. But that, of course, itself gets paused by the sheer amount of debating in the States General. There's a common theme going on here. Common theme. Now, again, as a reward for doing this wonderful, wonderful report, Story is made Shootbenacht. And, well, he's technically in command of the frigate divisions, but he's also a rear admiral, and he's stationed aboard the 74-gun Staten General. This ship catches on fire, and as they tried to extinguish the fire, they drifted to leeward, and it was impossible for them to rejoin the battle. It's impossible for them to rejoin the battle. Think about that. It's impossible for them to rejoin the battle because of the fire, and they've drifted too far to leeward. They can't crank on the sail and push themselves forward into the fleet. They can't join the action. It's impossible. The theme gets worse as time goes on. When the French were considering having the Batavian Republic intervene in the Irish Rebellion in 1798, it was a Texel. He was in charge of organising a squadron and commanding it. He was even given the temporary rank of Vice Admiral. However, they heard the rumours of a planned Anglo-Russian attack, and so they didn't. His nickname was Lucky. His nickname was something. He is Batavian. Batavian. It's Batavian. Batavian. Okay. Batavian. I know, but I keep saying Batavian for some reason. Mainly because, and don't take this the wrong way, to try and get some accurate, impartial source on this, I tried to read widely. And don't take this the wrong way, but some of the contemporary British accounts of this do not exactly spell the Batavian Republic correctly, and you get into bad habits. So I do apologise. I will try and make sure I get it right, but yeah. I read more spellings of it. Just don't take this the wrong way. Just the nicest way, the 18th century English pamphlets, and even more fun, the translations of some of the Russian stuff from the 18th century on this event do not always get the name correct, and it just is even more confusing for you as a historian when you're reading it. And yeah, and this is who's in charge of the squadron. They picked a keeper. They really did. Oh, did I spell it wrong? Yeah, you spend you're spending way too much time on them. Yeah, this is half the trouble of doing dyslexia and being a historian are not good combinations, because it takes a long time for people to be happy with what they're going to spell stuff. It really does. Trust me, I have enough fun with recognizance versus reconnaissance, and the fact that most people don't believe recognizance existed as a word, and they go, it did, but it exists for a word about 20 years. Anyway, then we have Andrew Mitchell, the Royal Navy officer. And he's a Scottish Royal Navy officer. He was born in 1757. So, in the nicest way, he is 5 years younger than Story. He joined the Royal Navy in 1771, a year after Story had officially joined the Admiralty of Rotterdam. And he would serve until he died in 1806 in Bermuda. Now, the interesting thing about Mitchell, it's worthwhile noticing, is that he is a Vice Admiral at this point. He's a Vice Admiral. He's 5 years younger than Story. 5 years younger than Story. And he is a Vice Admiral. in the Royal Navy. He was a, how do I put this politely, a very capable officer of the Royal Navy. He'd served in expeditions to India. In fact, when he joined the Royal Navy, he ended up getting promoted to lieutenant in 1766. Think about that. He gets promoted to lieutenant 2 years after Story does. So Story gets promoted to lieutenant in 1774. Mitchell makes lieutenant in 1776. Just think about that difference in terms of officers that we have going on there. Mitchell has made lieutenant. He is 5 years younger. He makes it only 2 years after. So, theoretically, if he'd been on the same track, he should have made it in 1779. In terms of service track. So he makes it 3 years ahead of Story. So he's doing well. He then managed to skip straight to post captain after distinguishing himself in action in 1778. So he gets straight to captain in 1778. Simple terms, he gets a captain of a post ship, i.e. a ship which is big enough over at 6th rate or higher, which you're going to post on, 3 years before Story does. This guy is a very different officer to Story. A very different officer. He has a bit of a reputation for a hard-fighting officer. In February 1795, he'd been commanding in ships under Howe in the Channel Fleet. By June 1795, he'd been made Rear Admiral of the Blue. Again, think about it. When does Story become an admiral? What's he doing? You know, how's he getting involved in things? And then he was made a vice admiral in 1799. He's a vice admiral. There is a difference here. The Royal Navy is a far larger navy. It's far harder to get ahead because there are so many other good officers for them to consider. Getting ahead like Mitchell has done means you're automatically probably one of the better officers coming through. And you're going to be trusted. He's going to end up having commands on North America Station, the East India Station, and HMS, as well as various ships in his experience. When he dies in 1806, you know, he is serving as the Commander-in-Chief of the North America West Indies Station. Posthumously, he was raised, well, when I say posthumously, it's 1805, he's technically raised Admiral of Blue, but there's a whole debate as to whether he hears about it before he dies on the 26th of February 1806. So there's a whole debate as to whether it's posthumous or not. Yeah, yes, there's a whole discussion going on about the Batavian, Batavian and the Batavian, and it's just, yes, in the nicest way, it's just fun. So these are the two commanders. These are the people we're going to be talking about in terms of naval officers. Do we think one of the navies here has a marred advantage in leadership? Anyone think either of these navies has an advantage in leadership in terms of their quality of their officer in charge of them? And anyone don't, I'd like to hear your opinions. Anyone think they do? Does someone who has one of these seats has an advantage in leadership? Anyone think one of these leaderships has a disadvantage? Paul Himmer's hand is waving. Okay. Oh. Yeah. I would say, Leslie, I know you're interested in Andrew Mitchell and his family. He marries a girl from Halifax, Nova Scotia. He only married her in May in 1805. He seemed to be a very popular officer. Yes, because I don't know how to say no sarcastically enough over text. Lions, the British, yeah. There is a difference. And then put it this way: the British are exploiting the institutional memory advantage of not having had a recent rebellion and not having lost half their officers because of someone deciding that suddenly Protestants are all evil. Show's book plug time. Right, so this is the part always where I get to say thank you to everyone for watching the channel. And by the way, also, if I didn't mention this in the beginning, this is a live. There's been a rise recently in, specifically 2 people it seems, commenting on lives and rather than premieres going, it takes so long to get started. Why are you talking to people? What's going on? Yes, I do premieres and lives for releasing the videos. Why? Because at the moment, YouTube seems to be heavily biasing premieres in terms of their promotion in the logarithm. Okay? Don't know why, but they are. But I love doing lives. So I do my lives twice a week, the Thursday and the Sunday, and the rest of the videos I make premieres because I'm not stupid. And because I have a book habit and an Iron Brew habit I need to fund. Thank you, Wade, again for earlier. I've said this in a video coming up, and I'll say this again. Does anyone want to guess how much money, cumulatively, I've learned in the entirety of all the shorts I've done on my channel? Okay? I don't know how many short videos I've done on YouTube. I will go and check to see how many shorts, but it's not a small number, I think. I think there's been quite a few published. Let's see. There's about 300 or so shorts videos being published on this channel. About 300 or so. Anyone want to guess how much money over those years all those shorts are brought in? Anyone? Less than £1. Not quite that bad. Okay, it's not that bad. But again, if I go right to the end and we think about where some of them are. When did I first publish a short? And this is a good example to me of, the realities of this. Because shorts, all the money comes from advertising. So it's a really good illustration of how much that counts towards your income streams. So my first short was published 20th of September 2021. £10 plus, yes. £15 before taxes. I'm glad you brought and read the book, Anna. I hope you are enjoying it. I hope it's been useful to you. Well, you Lions, you kid, but those 3 packs of Iron Brew have just arrived, right? That's £27 worth of Iron Brew. I could buy that and another 2 2-litre bottles of Iron Brew. £30, £31 and something like 11 pence is what the shorts have gained for me in their entire history of views and everything on this channel. So that's the point. The advertising revenue really, and this sounds terrible, unless you're an absolutely massive content creator and you've got a massive audience, it's not really going to be that viable. It's not really going to help you that much. It's not going to give you that many views and that much money. So I've been running shorts for 4 years, and I've put out over 300 shorts in that time. And I have made £31 before taxes. After taxes, it's probably less than that pile of iron brew over there. So that puts things like the memberships, that puts the Ko-fis, the Patreon, the Super Chats in context. And that's also one of the reasons why, when I was thinking about it, I have recently, you might have noticed that in the memberships now, there's 3 levels of membership. There's 3 levels of membership. And I've expanded it because I've now said, right, on the 5th video of a month, on those months, you notice, if I go to, quickly back to the, this page, while we're here, to this point, you know there are gaps coming up in August, and there's a couple in September, etc. They are going to be public vote topics, and I'm going to put forward topics for people to vote, and members are going to be able to vote for them on YouTube. And I'm going to put forward 10 topics, and the top 3 will get done. That's realistically what I'm going to do. And I just thought I'd do it as an interesting thing for people to do, as a sort of a way for members to get a bit of vote on some topics. But yeah, the reason I've done it is because memberships and super chats are by far the biggest portion of income you get from YouTube, by far. I would say Patreon, currently the vote is currently going on for September and October's top 12. So that's the thing, there's 25 options, so it only has to be in the top 12, so that almost the top 50%, not quite the top 50%, but pretty much just about there, of the votes, and it's going to get done. So it's never been a better scenario. There are 4, that's going to mean that there are going to be 16 Patreon premieres over the course of September and October. Every Saturday and every Thursday is going to be a Patreon premiere. And the reason I'm doing that is because, honestly, with all the stuff we've got going on in September and prepping for, hopefully, going to Japan and everything, which should be advertised soon, and all sorts of details about that, because we're starting it. We just haven't put up the fundraising page and things yet. It's going to be interesting. But thank you for your support. Thank you for making it possible. And thank you for doing all the stuff you do. Frankly, we wouldn't be here without you. And before anyone asks, yes, I'm still going to keep making the shorts because, as I said before, I do not do these things for the money. If I did stuff for the money, I would have followed my bachelor students after I got my PhD into insurance risk analysis and be working in the City of London. Because, judging by the conversations I have with them, and by the way, here's the fun thing, doesn't matter whether it's an upturn or a downturn, the insurance people get paid. You want a career profession where you're going to earn a lot of money and you're never going to have to worry about the economy, be an insurance adjuster. They make money whether it's going bad or going good. They're still making the money. But yeah, it's the fact I'm able to do all this is all thanks to you and all your support. So yeah. Yes, it would drive me mad. There is a reason I don't do it. So, Now let's get into the events which lead up to what happens to the fleet. And, oh good lord. This is almost depressing. I feel so bad for the Dutch, but realistically, the Batavian Republic deserves it, because the Batavian Republic are absolutely insane. They are. They are insane. The Battle of Calençon. Now, if you're thinking, Alex, what is this battle? This is an amphibious assault, which shouldn't have worked. Under no scenario should this have worked. Literally, what we are about to talk about is the kind of event which should never, ever be possible. Because the British invasion force, the troops, arrive under Lieutenant General Sir Ralph Abercrombie. Now, he's a fairly good general. He's a fairly decent general. And they start what's called as the Anglo-Russian invasion of Holland in 1799. Now, technically, the thing is, they establish a bridgehead and Batavians are forced to retreat because the Batavians do strong opposition by their troops. But they don't. They fight heroically, they fight bravely, but it's not strong opposition. Do you know why that is? You see, the Batavians have made preparations for the coming events, for the Batavian invasion. They have time to consider the terrain. And Den Helder was might have been just a hamlet with 2 shore batteries, small guns, nearby. But it was located extreme north, point of a split of sand. It juts into North Holland Peninsula, north of Calençon, and there's 3 rows of dunes behind the North Sea beach, and there's a road bordered by a canal behind them. Behind the canal's a marsh. The sand spit is bordered in the north by the Marseillac and the east by the Wadden Sea. It's not more than half a mile wide. Honestly, it should have been absolutely perfect to defend. What I'm talking about is a textbook example of a place you wouldn't get into. There are people in the chat now, I know there are because I've spoken to them enough, who are former ground forces, who have served in their nation's armies. If you heard there was a thin beach that stuck out to sea, trapped between the sea, a canal, small road and marshes, would you want to be landing in that area? Because there are just so many natural obstacles. There are literally non-stop dunes. Everything should be against you. There is no earthly reason you should be able to make it ashore and successfully take that area. It's the only real place where the landings can take place. It's the only real option. But to defend it is an absolute dream. Because it was only half a mile wide, though, Daendels, the general in charge of the Batavian forces, who sometimes I do wonder which side he's on. I honestly do. He's kind of like Charles the 13th of Sweden, when he's the Prince of Sonderhun in the Russo-Swedish Wars. I'm never quite sure which side he's on. Never quite sure. Just that alligators and anacondas and you get Florida. Yeah, no! There is no desire if I get welcomed by friendly troops. So he figures you can't deploy your division on there while fronting the shore, so he only puts the Jagers, the Dutch skirmishers, there in the dunes, but he plans to attack a landing from both its north and south in a double flank attack as soon as they land. He puts the 5th and the 7th Demi Brigades under command of Major General Van Durik in Den Helder, together with the 2nd Jaegers and some light cavalry and horse artillery, about 5,000 troops in total. And he takes up position near Kalsong with the 1st Batavian Division under Major General Van Nucht. And this was, of course, made up of the 1st, 3rd, 4th, and 6th Danish Brigades, the 1st Jaegers, and 1st Grenadiers, about another 5,200 men in total. Now, here's the thing. What thing has he just done? What has he just done? Everyone listening to that, hang on. What has he just done? He's got one part of his force here, one part of his force here. What has he done? Yes, Leslie. He split his force. And anyone know what a cardinal rule of warfare is not to do with your command? Anyone in the chat know what you're never supposed to do? Under any circumstances. And by the way, there's even a scene in the TV program Vikings where literally they're positioned on one side of the river, the Naval army on the other side of the river, and they can't reinforce each other. Split it. Never split your force. So, not only has he not got proper troops sitting on the split and the area where they're going to land, he's also got his force divided. So, at 0300 hours, because the British do not understand the concept of letting their opponents sleep, the British vanguard under General Pulteney embarks in boats, and they find there's not enough to accommodate all the troops at once. So they perform their landing in stages. They literally land with 2,500 men of the 3rd Brigade. They put their troops ashore. Lieutenant MacDonald of the Grenadier Company of the 25th is the first to arrive. What happens then? Well, as the British troops are coming in, do you know what happens to the poor Jaegers who are supposed to be out there trying to skirmish with them? Anyone guess what, the British are doing? What Mitchell's doing? Yes, he's brought his ships in close, and he is sweeping the beaches with cannon fire. How to trump skirmishers trying to do, nice skirmishy things versus your forces landing. Heavy artillery. Rock that one. It just gets interesting. And it gets worse. Because on top of one of the dunes, there is a semaphore station, which was being used as an HQ facility to an extent, but was also the only building on that area. So it kind of stuck out. So guess what the British are concentrating on and gets quickly taken out? The semaphore station, which gets surrounded and overrun blooming quickly. It's just, it's just not doing well. And the Jaegers keep trying to prevent the capture of the places. They keep trying to skirmish. But no. They have to withdraw. And there was a line battalion which was with them for some reason to act as support. And when the Jaegers are trying to draw through them, that battalion panics and are routed, and their commander, the appropriately or inappropriately named Lieutenant Colonel Luck, dies in action. possibly killed by his own men. Because the thing is, the fight that goes on between the Jaegers and the British are not close enough to be doing much killing, while the Jaegers are trying to draw through the Line Battalion, who are panicking and routing, and it's during this scenario that their Lieutenant Colonel dies. This is just not good. And then the 2nd Battalion of the 5th Emir Brigade tries to counterattack with the bayonet charge. But by this point, the British have a full brigade watching them. And are you noticing something? I keep talking about Batavian battalions attacking. And this is what the whole fight degenerates into. The generals keep sending forward battalion strength formations. And the British are going, that's great! We have 4 brigades. Oh, you're making our life easy. And we have heavy artillery support from ships. There is a term which is often used for stealth aircraft called about normal aircraft called clubbing baby seals. This is not clubbing baby seals. This is wantonly murdering your own troops. Then General Giric decides that he's going to try and bring and march south with the 2nd Battalion 7th Brigade and 2 squadrons of cavalry and horse artillery to rally the 2nd of the 5th. Unfortunately, he deploys into the swamp. He knows the swamp's there. He's Dutch. It's Dutch territory. He's been there for the last few weeks setting up his troops. And yet he deploys his troops into a swamp. Sorry, I'm shouting. Behind the canal, bordering the Zanjic. This cuts him off from communications with his own command and the divisional command of the Batavian right wing. So, and then he finds that the canal basically stops him being able to attack the British. And the trouble is, this means that the remainder of the 7th Demi Brigade, under Colonel Gilquin, who is supposed to attack the British left flank, is motionless during the entire battle for lack of orders to do anything. And Gilquin doesn't do anything without orders. Jacob, no offense, we build whole cities in swamps, so why not deploy infantry in there? You do today. You did then as well. But in the nicest way at this period, deploying them into a swamp, behind a canal, behind a road, with all those obstacles in front, you couldn't get them out of it. And yes, you do normally drain them and provide some flooring to get over them first. At this point, the British are going, right then, that side's defeated. What about next side? And Dendels finally started moving. It's brilliant. The British couldn't believe their luck. This is the best battle they fought all year, all decade, all century. They're going to get so many laurels for this. The British are deploying gunboats to support the beaches and provide support. Now, basically, gunboats are the largest rowing boats they have on the ships, the largest of the ship's boats, with small cannon in them, providing support. And what happens is Dendels deploys forward. He first has Colonel Crass attack with the 1st and 3rd Battalions of the 5th Enemy Brigade, supported by cavalry and a couple of pieces of horse artillery. And Karras is opposed by the 3rd Brigade, under the command of General Coote, as General Putney had managed to receive a wound to the arm and been forced to leave the field. What are you doing? Cute doggy. Unfortunately for them, the British only had enough room to deploy 1 battalion in line, and they were worried they were going to get outflanked. But the terrain works against the Batavians. The horses were sinking to their bellies in the dune sand. Artillery was immobilized, and the British gunboats came up and went, "Hello. How are we feeling? Anyone feeling like some cannonball?" It's just nasty. I'm starting to get sarcastic and rude, and that's because it is quite so absurd. And, well, combined with that, whenever the British infantry do spot the enemy through gaps in the dunes, they open fire as quickly and as blastingly as they can. This all mauls Colonel Crass's troops. And slowly they are driven back. And then Daendels starts to try and feed in reinforcements to the battle. And this is the trouble about the Batavians. They have never met a bad situation they don't want to reinforce. You know, some people think that Hitler is the only person in history who likes to reinforce a loss. When he's losing, he starts reinforcing and just keep reinforcing until he's lost even more. No, the Batavians, oh boy, do they love to reinforce a loss. They do. No wonder they send Daendels to Java. There are many reasons to send Daendels to places. I would send him a long way away from anything. And he just keeps feeding in. He feeds them in a battalion at a time. So you have the first, you have elements, companies, a couple of companies of the 1st, the 3rd, the 6th Air Brigades being used up without doing anything because they're attacking less than a battalion strength at a time against the British Brigade, which is going, tasty treats! And, oh, by the way, have you met the fact that we've got artillery, heavy artillery, giving us close support? The British infantry are basically going, have you met my friend? They're called the Royal Navy. They bring cannon. At a certain point, Daendels decides he has to withdraw. Now, here's the thing. The Helder batteries, their guns are trained seaward the whole time. They therefore can't be defended from the land side. And, well, there's also a small fort which he was supposed to protect. And he just starts to withdraw, and he spikes all the guns, and he just keeps withdrawing, and he keeps withdrawing, and he keeps withdrawing. And eventually, his troops, the reason he's withdrawing is because his troops keep leaving him. They just keep leaving him. And when I say the troops keep leaving him, I mean whole battalions. The colonels just up and leave. Well, the troops aren't deserting as following their colonels are going, this is a game for monkeys. I'm not doing this. Where's the big attack? The consequence is that New Deep falls into British hands without a fight. Providing a very nice port and disembarkation point for the Russians and the British later on in the campaign. It's brilliant. It's wonderful. They've now got a wonderful place to draw to. Oh, now you've decided to cover PT. And this is the worst thing I'm about to tell you, right? So the British have done this attack. They have done an amphibious assault. Dan Freeman, I'm confused. The Russians were involved in the phase, and then it gets worse. Isn't the current one? No, the Russians are doing very well. They're being very competently led, and they are helping out. They're having a lovely time. It seems to be that the Batavian Republic, has taken all the and then it gets worse from the Russians at this point. What can I say? I know a whole pile of biscuits fell out, but don't think you're getting them all. I'm not that generous. Whew. And, well, here's the thing. The British during the losses during the battle are 74 men killed, including 20 men that drowned from the boats, 376 wounded and 20 missing. The Dutch lost 137 dead and 950 wounded. And, well, Dandel's confidence, because first he tries to go back to Zuidpolder and tries to set up a defensive line, but then he withdraws from there, as he feared that there would be an amphibious landing near Petten in his rear, which would have placed him again between two British forces. And so he has to withdraw even further. And eventually, he just keeps withdrawing. You know, he'd abandoned Fortress of Den Helder. He'd abandoned everything that could have been there. The fact is, though, Den Helder is not particularly protectable. It really isn't. But there again, with enough forces, he could have held it. And he did have enough forces. What it required was he concentrate his force and actually command them. And not commit them as piecemeal. The thing is, though, it now gets worse. And the ships we're talking about are the Dan Helder Squadron, and it's worthwhile considering what these ships are. Because the point is, and it's a point that needs to be made, the Dutch don't have that many ships available. After what's happened already, after the Battle of Camperdown, which would be bad enough for the Dutch. Remember, at the Battle of Camperdown, they had lost not just ships of the line, and they'd lost enough of those. 9 ships of the line captured and 2 frigates captured. And 9 out of 15 ships of the line and 2 out of 6 frigates. They'd lost Jan Wilhelm de Winter. They'd lost a lot of their key people. So that'd have been bad. What is worse is when you look at the ships involved in that fight and the order of battle of them. The Dutch vessels, well, 3 of their precious 74s were in that group, as well as 1 of their 72s and 3 of their 68s. So a lot of their core ships. In this order of battle, or rather this order of force, because, well, it doesn't fight a battle, we have the Washington, 74-gun ship of the line, commanded by Captain Theodorus van Capellen. Cerberus, 68-gun ship of the line, commanded by Captain de Jong van Rormerg. Admiral de Ruyter, 68-gun ship of the line, captained by Captain Hughes. Gelderland, a 68-gun ship of the line, captained by Captain Lieutenant Waldeck. Leiden, a 68-gun ship of the line, captained by Captain Agilius van Braam. Utrecht, a 68-gun ship of the line, captained by Captain Dirk Hendrik Kolff. Batavia, a 56-gun ship of the line, captained by Captain Van Serden. Bescherme, a 64-gun ship of the line, captained by Captain Elbracht. Mars, a 44-gun frigate, captained by Captain Bock. Amphitrite, 40-gun frigate captained by Captain Shooter. Embuscade, a 32-gun frigate captained by Captain Rivery. And Gelte, a 16-gun ship a sloop captained by First Lieutenant Drupp. Now, the thing is, and this is important, is this force had already withdrawn. It had already withdrawn. Why? Because of the force that had been brought with the British. The British fleet, when it had sailed to come and do the invasion, massed 26 ships of the line, third rates or greater. It massed many frigates, many sloops. It was carrying with it a full force structure. Okay? That is a problem. When we talk about the fleet which Mitchell later confronts Story with, he confronts him with a fleet of 17 ships of the line. It's worthwhile remembering his total force includes 26 ships of the line, which means he's leaving in reserve more ships of the line than the Dutch have in their force. Think about that. How that is for a statement of power. Oh, my reserve squadron is bigger than your actual fighting force. My reserve squadron is bigger, meaner, and more heavily armed, and better trained and better prepared than your reserve fighting force. And Story had actually done the sensible thing when the fleet had started appearing. He'd withdrawn. He had withdrawn. He'd actually withdrawn when he'd seen the first batch of 11 ships of the line start to arrive. And 7 frigates. But the fact is, there had been reinforcements to come in, and the full ships of the line force was 26 ships of the line committed to this fleet. 26. Mitchell has the ability to call on. And he's ordered back. Now, why has he come back? Why has he been ordered back? Well, because someone has a bright idea. He'd been ordered back and told he must give battle on the explicit orders of Jacobus Spores, the agent for the Navy of the Batavian Republic, i.e. its minister. So let's see this. Your Schubernacht, your rear admiral, sees that he's going to be annihilated. He's going to be overwhelmed by the force he's facing. He sees that, frankly, this is not sensible, and he withdraws. And you order him back when he knows he is outnumbered by more than 3-1 in terms of ships of the line. Almost twice that in frigates and sloops. Really? Whatever persuades you to do this. The Washington was one of the ships which I think it was originally the Princess of Orange, but it had been renamed the George Washington when the Batavian Republic was proclaimed, because, he was a great Republican leader. I'm not sure if George Washington, he died in December 1799. Not sure if he ever realised the Dutch named a ship after him. It had been launched in 1796, so probably did.
probably did. Probably was told and had data about it, but it's then captured by the British and it's renamed HMS Princess of Orange. And she serves in the Royal Navy, like a lot of these ships are going to. I think Washington was one of the ships ordered by actually the Batavian Republic and was renamed Princess of Orange by the Royal Navy after they captured her. It's a fun thing. So anyway, the Dutch are in trouble and someone has had a bright idea. They've had such a bright idea. I don't know how they could have such a bright idea. It's really disturbing. So, Story is ordered to go back. Story is ordered to go back. Thank you, Leslie. And, when they return on 25th of August, what do they find flying? Do you imagine the British have allowed British or Russian flags to be flying from the batteries and the churches in Den Helder? Anyone think the British have done that? Or anyone think the British have gone psychological warfare on their opponents? Anyone think the British would be downright cruel enough to go psychological warfare on their enemies in 1799? Leslie raised Dutch flags. Maybe. Let's see. Anyone else before we get to talk about it? Dutch flags only. Old United Provinces flags. Latter and yes. Yeah, they had. They were flying the Prince of Orange's flag. They were flying the flags of the Stadtholder. And this causes problems. Because the ship's crews start to mutiny. So now, on the 20th of August, 1799, Story has returned to the Vlieter roadstead. He's been forced to anchor there because adverse winds prevent him from mounting a direct attack on the Allied fleet. And even if he does, he's outnumbered and outgunned. And now his ships are starting to mutiny. So what does he do being a Dutch commander? What do we think? Being a Dutch commander. What do we think he's going to do? Do you think he's going to take decisive action? Anyone think he's going to take decisive action when he's faced with mutinying and all these issues and the fleet's in trouble? What do we think William Story is going to do? Or rather, not William Story, it's Samuel, isn't it? Samuel Story is going to do. No. He calls for a council of war. And as such, he also sends his flag captain, Van Capellen, and Cerberus's captain, De Jong, under a flag of truce to parley with Andrew Mitchell. He's doing this because he wants to have a temporary truce in order to try and get his fleet in a better form, so he can try and buy some time to restore order back to the fleet. There is a small trouble this. Remember how I said at the beginning, a long while ago, that officers who'd resigned from the fleet because they disagreed with the Batavian Republic and wanted the Orangists to return had been let back into the Navy. Meet Story's flag captain, Theodorus Frederick van Capellen. Anyone want to guess who's actually leading the mutinies on Story's own ships? You see, here is the fun thing. Before the Royal Navy had even left to go on this operation, back in 1795, they, using their intelligence officers and assistants, had managed to get a gentleman called Karel Hendrik Verheul, who was an officer who had left the Navy in 1795, to go on behalf of the Prince to contact his former colleagues. And his former colleagues includes Theodorus Frederick van Capellen and Just van Braam. In fact, if you go through the captains of these ships, you will find a surprising number of them are Orangist officers who are loyal to the Stadtholder, not to the Batavian Republic. And oh my lord, couldn't this be worse? Couldn't this be worse? And so, when these officers who have been causing the fomenting of rebellion and have explicitly not been putting down rebellions and mutinies on their ships, even though they could have, the Stadtholder, yeah. Well, these officers go to Mitchell, and these two negotiators sent are actually the ringleaders of the mutiny. And they go to Mitchell, and they tell Mitchell what Story's doing. And Mitchell goes, really, that does surprise me. I couldn't guess that with, the eyes in my head and the ears on my head. I really couldn't have worked this one out. But okay, carry on. Thanks for telling me. Jacob, yeah, I understand why the Brits are flying the Prince's flag then. They wouldn't have to do any... No, they weren't going to have to do any fighting at all. And so Mitchell issues an ultimatum of Story for 1 hour to surrender, or Mitchell's fleet would engage. Story held a council of war, carried on holding a council of war. And interesting enough, at this council of war is a Lieutenant Colonel Frederick Maitland, who was a British parliamentarian as well as a lieutenant colonel in the army. And he was sent to act as the British observer. Yes, the British were allowed to send an observer to the Dutch Council of War. I mean, it couldn't get any more farcical if it tried. The British not only have spies in there on their side, and actually don't already basically control 75% of the officers in the room by their loyalties, but they actually have their own man walk in uniform to represent the British case. It just... Words are starting to fail me on this one. I know it's a different time. I know it's a different form of diplomacy. But seriously, Jacob, I'm beginning to understand why this era of Batavian Republic is completely skipped in the school's history lessons. Yes, there are good reasons to. Good boy. Okay, you deserve a biscuit for coming to helping your papa out of that one. It gets it gets worse, my friend. It gets worse because let's put it this way: The nakedness of what Van Capellen, De Jong, Van Bran were all arguing in the council of accepting the ultimatum was so great, that Maitland actually writes a letter to General Dundas, who is basically the acting head of British intelligence at this period, roughly, although British intelligence doesn't exist officially for another 100 or so years, but there's General Dundas. Look him up, you'll be amazed. And he actually writes to him that, the opinions and sentiments expressed by Captains Van Capel, Van Bram, and Sick Jong, and Van Brom in the presence of the Ambassadorian might not become public. And those officers thereby endangered. To you in this letter I apprehend I do write to inform you that above-mentioned captains did declare their attachment to the stadtholder and the former government, and they discussed the present government and their French connections. It was getting tough. And while this was going on, while this council was taking place in Washington, there's also a full-blown mutiny, where the men are refusing to man their guns, throwing their munitions into the sea. And when they try and stop them, it doesn't work. In fact, all apart from the Batavian, on which was Captain Van Sender's command, all describe things as similar. All described as similar. They all decided that trying to fight a battle would do little to halt the invasion, as disembarkation had already taken place and they would lose. Scuttling the fleet was impossible, as the crews would not allow it. The crews, which, by the way, have been stirred into a fiery mob by certain people, their own captains. And they felt that if they surrendered without resistance, the ships would end up in the possession of the stadtholder rather than being war prizes of the Royal Navy. It's a hope. It certainly is a hope. What do we think, though? Anyone want to guess what the result is from the council? Anyone? Well, it seems a bit cruel to make you all guess. They unanimously decide to lower the flag of the Batavian Republic and declare themselves prisoners of war. They theoretically refuse to hoist the orange flag until after Mitchell's accepted the surrender, which he accepts in the name of the Prince of Orange, and then orders the flag of the Prince to be hoisted. Which the officers of the ships then complied. Now, that is all technically legal, because the British, by taking possession of the ships, the surrender ships, in the name of the Prince of Orange, flagging them as the Prince of Orange ships is all legal. But for many people at the time, this is interpreted as high treason. I'm fairly sure what was already going on the ships is high treason. Hoisting the frigating flag is not. That's just normal form of what you do once you've surrendered. You hoist the flag of the nation that you've surrendered to. That's how it goes. But we'll leave that to one side. Oh, it's just terrible. And, believe it or not, while the Council of War had been going on and the captains hadn't been aboard their ships, things had been getting worse on their ships. An officer had been drowned, many had been beaten up. The Batavian flag on most of the ships wasn't necessary to be lowered because it had already been torn down by the mutineers. And it's actually British officers which have to come aboard and restore order. Luckily, when doing this, they are assisted because they have Prince William, the future William VI, coming around helping them of the future prince, future stadtholder. Now, at this point, there is a whole other discussion going on, and this is when things get even more farcical, because he thinks, because the ships have surrendered
to him, or as a representative of his father, and are now flying his flag, they belong to him. He really does believe that. Unfortunately, he finds out that rather than getting to keep the crews aboard ships, for some reason the British don't trust those crews, they disembark them, embark British prize crews, and sell them to England. He is not allowed to take command of the fleet himself and turn it into his own private navy. The British went, no, not happening. But you've taken their surrender in my name. Yes, not happening. However, they were very kind and generous. They gave him 5 derelict frigates, which were lying off down Helder. They're handed over to him with much pomp and ceremony, and he managed to organise volunteer crews from people living in the vicinity to crew them and sell them to England, and 4 of those actually reach England. Only 1 found us with loss of life. But here's the point. Between the Vlieter incident, which takes out 8 ships of the line, and the Dutch only have at this point another 5 74s and 9 64s available. So they only have 14 more ships of the line available. Between the Vlieter incident and, well, our good friend from earlier, the capitulation of Saldanha Bay, they've now lost more ships of the line than they did at Camperdown. And they lost 9 there. But the Bavarian Republic has so far lost 20 ships of the line to the British. Is it William VI or William V? Because I'm not sure if he's the... Yeah, we've got William V, Prince of Orange, was the one who was the previous one. And then this is William VI. Yeah, it's William V of Orange at this period, so then he's William VI. William VI is his son. He's the future William VI. He's the son of William V. I know, there's Williams and Georges and at a certain point Charleses, and you just want to go around several kings of Europe and go, stop naming your sons after yourselves. It's disturbing. Stop it. Stop it now. These are the Dutch kings, Mark Harkness. We started anew when we became a kingdom in 1814. Yeah, it's just the Dutch start anew. They have a new world, a new order. What can I say? So he doesn't get what he wants, but we're now onto the summary point. And honestly, I had to admit this was going to be a short one, but there again, I thought there'd be lots of questions, and I thought we could have an interesting question session afterwards, so I will be turning on the bot in a bit after we go through the summary. Said Alex the 48th. Look, in the nicest way, my family does have the good grace that we are not usually the son is called the same name as the father. So whilst we might only have Alexander, Arthur, Andrew, Donald, and Douglas as our sort of 5 names, we do tend to alternate names. We do. Don't get me started. So, what is the result of all this Vlieter incident? What really happens? Well, basically, surprise, surprise, it turns out the civilian population of North Holland isn't fervently in favour of the Orange cause. They aren't as beloved of the prince as the prince expected. This doesn't mean they like the Batavian Republic, okay? The thing is, most of the Dutch population just would like the people who are arguing over running their country to stop arguing over who should be running the country and actually run the frigging country, okay? They don't care who's in charge. They just like someone to actually be in charge, rather spending all their time arguing about being who's in charge and putting up blooming trees to show the glory of them being in charge, but not actually doing anything. They just want their government to actually be a government instead of a talking shop. They don't care who it is. They don't particularly like either side. They don't particularly want either side. They really find them all rather annoying. They just want someone to actually take a frigging decision on time for once. It's just disturbing. Thankfully, the Batavian army proves kind of resilient once they get decent officers. And managed, with the support of the French army of occupation, to actually defeat the Allies at the Battle of Bergen and the Battle of Castricum. And so the Allies are forced to evacuate North Holland at the end of October. Dutch politics didn't change. No, Dutch politics has never changed, Jacob. It has never changed. 400, 200 years, ever. It has been the same for a long time. Anger management issues. I'm feeling anger on behalf, on behalf of the Dutch people. Stop arguing over who orders the roads fixed. Just fix the roads. Yes, my Agnes. That is literally the Dutch public's mantra to their governments. Stop arguing over it. Just do it. Just do it. I am still certain that if me and Drac get together and set up the boring but competent party in the UK, we would get elected, because we'd just be going, we don't care about the politics decision, we'll just make the frigging decisions. And basically, you know, the Batavian Republic at this point decides they're going to convene a court-martial, and they are going to start executing the officers and the mutineers. As most of these officers and mutineers are actually away in England, their view was it would wait until the first return to Netherlands on parole. Only Story, Van Param, and Van Kellen remained outside of the reach of the court. They are tried in absentia. Corneo's captain of the Greer was condemned to death, executed aboard the Rosenberg on 27th December. Captain Dirk Hendrik Kuyf of the Utrecht was condemned to death, but managed to escape before his execution. Captain de Jong was acquitted on the charge of treason for lack of evidence. I mean, literally the guy who was one of the principal agitators under the supporting the Orange's cause was acquitted because of lack of evidence. He was convicted for dereliction of duty and was cashiered. And they made him undergo a symbolic, simulated execution. A sword is swung at his head, but doesn't hit, and banished for life. Oh, God, talk about performative justice. They then suspended the trials with the hope that more officers would become available. In July 1801, they start opening it again. They basically try to do the same to their officer corps as the British have done. But there's a problem. The British officer corps is fundamentally loyal to their government. at this point and when Bing is executed. They're fundamentally loyal to the nation. They might not like the government, but they're loyal to the nation. The trouble is, the Dutch are so enraptured in their own politics that there's actually a question of whether they're loyal to their political party, whether it's the Oranges or the Republicans, or they're loyal to their nation. Eventually, the temporary court in 1802 is replaced by the Hoge Militaire Vicher, the High Military Court. And it eventually conducts the trials of those officers who are still not there in absentia. When it became clear they wouldn't return to the Netherlands after the Peace of Amiens in 1802. When they were technically released as prisoners of war. It's very interesting. Van Capellen and Van Bram and Cruyff's experience of prisoners of war was very different to stories, but we'll leave that to one side. They were convicted of dereliction of duty, cowardice, and disloyalty. Declared them perjurous because they'd broken their oath of loyalty, without honour and infamous. They were cashiered and banished for life, on penalty of execution. Beheading for story, firing squad for the rest. I'm not sure if that's nice or nice or nasty. And story protests his innocence to the very end. Publishing the public defence in a book, and moves to Germany. He dies in Cleves in 1811 before he could ask the King of Netherlands for rehabilitation. The others were fully rehabilitated, of course, by the Oranges Party when they restored power. Van Capellen becomes a Vice Admiral of the Royal Netherlands Navy and commands a squadron at the bombardment of Algiers in 1816. And basically, the Batavian Republic is not long for this world. It's well known to the fact that the Batavian Republic doesn't last that long. It's declared in 1795. It's confirmed by the Hague Treaty in May 1795. It becomes the Kingdom of Holland again in 1806. It becomes the Kingdom of Holland in 1806. And that lasts till 1810. And then it's taken over as part of the French Empire. And then it is succeeded by the United Kingdom of the Netherlands, which is when William the First is made. And William the First was also, of course, William the Sixth, Stadtholder. The guy who we were just talking about had his fun times. So basically, our Stadtholder, he's the sixth. As King of the Netherlands, he is the first. So there you go. That is the story of the Batavian Republic and the Vlieter's incident. And if you are now mildly depressed by that inability to actually command and organize themselves, I understand that depression. I understand that. But I would love to say they learned from their lessons, but they didn't. There was a William I, but he was a stadtholder. And then it's the William I as King of Netherlands. Yeah. It's just... Oh, yeah. And because the Batavian Republic is taken over by a kingdom which is put under one of Napoleon's... I think it's Joseph Bonaparte, isn't it? Is it Joseph? It's Joseph Bonaparte, isn't it? That's put in charge at one point. Oh. Hey, caramba. I will be starting the questions, but Let me just get the bot working, see if the bot is working. Hello. Let's get this working. Sorry, just getting StreamBot to actually work. It's always fun. Very patient, fluffy. He is a very patient, fluffy research assistant. We'll see if this works. If it doesn't work, then I'll do it the old-fashioned way. Seneca, don't put questions in yet, because I'm not activate. Okay, I'm going to go back to a previous version of StreamBot, because 2.8 is just not working for me. Let's see if we can't extract and run StreamBot to 2.7.
Sorry about this, everyone, but yeah, Streambot's been playing up on. I would, if I am happy to do it the old-fashioned way if I have to, but I prefer this way because then I don't lose people's questions. And that sounds terrible, but yeah, it's not starting. So I'm trying to start 2.7. Because if 2.8 is not going to work at all, then 2.7 is my only option. And for some reason, it's not working on this machine. It could be the internet. It could be that's muckied up or something like that, but it's not been working at all. Okay. No, Paul, I don't think there'll be enough that I need to grab them. But just at Alexander Clarke in them, and I'll grab them myself. So that'll be fine. That'll be fine. I'll just open up a Word file and stick them in there and there. And then tomorrow I will have to spend some time with StreamerBot figuring it out. But before I start taking questions, I'm just going to open up a Word file. Because I said, I'm going to stick them in there. Exit that. Open up a Word file. And basically, at me your questions once I put the sign up. Okay? So, questions live. And I'm off to grab an iron brew quickly. I know. If I'm going to keep spending that much money on iron brew, I need to probably earn more money. I need to. I do. But it'll be fine. I still have enough money for your biscuits, so we're all okay. Computer is not my friend and does not want me to have it. Well, no, my computer is fine. It's StreamBot, which for some reason isn't working. I'm going to have to possibly have a look through this computer's build. There are some issues. The graphics card has got a slight glitch function on it. It seems to be it's all processing everything okay. The only glitch seems to come out in the screen output to me, not in terms of what's produced in terms of videos which come through to all of you. So I'm not too worried about that. But it does sometimes affect video replay on this channel in terms of what I see. Anyway. Right, let's take in questions. So please, at me, when you're sending in questions, just put at Alexander Clarke, at Dr. at Alex, and it should I should show up, because I should be in both chats. It's not Runon's fault. There have been some issues recently with... The problems are that my computer, because of some of the stuff I work on, I run some pretty fancy security stuff, and sometimes that causes issues. But also, not the fanciest of fancy security stuff, of course. And purge DNS. I regularly purge my DNS. Okay, Anna, I've got your question. Okay. Why is it after every time I have problems with this thing, I need to end up restarting Windows Explorer?
Okay, that's all working now. Right, I've got questions. Getting questions. Right, so just getting the questions in. Thanks, Ronald. I know my laptop, I sometimes need to reset port after I disconnect some software. Yeah, I have done the port mapping and the port spoofing and checked all those things as well. Michael Cooch, thank you. I've grabbed your question. And I will go and check the Discord so I make sure I've got the questions from there. But while I'm doing that, I will start answering questions. Anna, how would you rate Dutch crews in this period compared to the British and French? They are better prepared and better trained than the French ones, but they're not getting as much experience as the British ones, and they've not got as heavier ships. The problem for the Dutch is to, in nicest way, for them to get ships which are the size of the ships which the British and the French and the other nations are starting to put out, especially in the major ones. They need to do a lot of infrastructure investment, and getting the Dutch governments to invest in infrastructure is like trying to get a stone to weep wine. Getting it to weep blood, you can fake that. You can possibly get that far easier than you can get wine from it, or iron brew. Yeah, trying to get iron brew out of it, that would be fun. Ay, caramba. Right. New IQV 4472. Does this explain why the Dutch went to having monarchy? I think, honestly, the Dutch have a monarchy because at the end of the whole Revolutionary Wars, there are a lot of monarchy powers who are going, you will have monarchies, because, frankly, that's what we're setting up now. That's the thing. Also, I think the number of Dutch which actually supported it was basically, the idea was at least then you've got someone who might actually do something and might actually act in the long-term interest of the nation. And that's ultimately, this is the thing. I've often said a constitutional monarchy could in theory be the best of both worlds for a democracy. What I would call a monarchy, because by its very definition, a monarch has to think in terms of long term, because they want to not only live, but they want to pass on something to their successors. So they want them to stay in power. Now, in the UK, we have so effectively now pushed the monarchy out of the decision-making process that it's now almost entirely left with the politicians. But it used to be the monarchy would guide the House of Lords, which was full of people who didn't bother about getting elected because they didn't need to be elected to get there. And whilst they would think of their own self-interest quite often, they would also think long-term, because what was for the long-term good of them and the nation? And that's important to someone who's thinking in terms of the survival of a dynasty rather than an individual. politicians and members of the House of Commons tend to think rather shorter term. And I sometimes think that the British have now skewed the balance. I agree with having... this is the thing. I agree with having life peers. I think that's a good thing. I think it should be the House of Lords should be staffed as sort of... I've always put forward as it should be staffed to extent as a quarter hereditary peers, 50% life peers, who are people who are put in for services to the nation, nominated for various good things, former leaders of the armed forces, former justices, chief justices, those sort of people. And the other 25% should actually be elected. And they should be elected Lords, and their duty, they would be basically, you take every 4 MPs constituencies, you turn it into an elective one, and the person who won the vote by first past the post, simple and easy, would be the elected Lord for that area, the Lord-elect. And that's how I'd balance out the fact that you have the hereditary Lords, and that's how I'd fix the House of Lords. I'd then have, in the nicest way, the House of Commons, still as the House of Commons, and I'd have a Senate which would be basically you'd vote in your local elections for your MPs, first past the post. The person who gets the most votes in that seat wins, becomes the MP. However, all those votes are then combined, and they are set up as percentages for a Senate. Or something, or assembly, or whatever, a National Assembly, let's call it. And the people who go into get the seats in the National Assembly will be the first losers. So people who are basically, you take all the results from around the country, and the people who got the most votes but didn't win a seat get the position, get to represent their party in the assembly. And so that means that the assembly people are not chosen. It's basically it's proportional representation, but but those members of the assembly, those people there are not chosen by the party. They're chosen by the public. So makes your vote really does matter. So instead of you voting for someone because, well, there's no point me voting in this local election because let's say the Labour person will always win. It doesn't matter who they are. So there's no point me going out and voting Tory or voting Liberal Democrat. Well, actually, there is a point, because if you vote for them, they might end up in the Assembly. And my view is that the Commons should have lead in all the economics and basically the taxes. The House of Lords should have the lead when it comes to infrastructure and investment in those sort of things. And when it comes to laws, as in passing laws that should be the Assembly's job. And it should, these things, all three will be working together. But that's me, basically. Can I shrink the banner? Am I hiding from stuff? I am. What, I'm hiding. Sorry, didn't realise it. Had Discord open in front of it. Do apologise. But that's the thing. That's the real advantage. You're trying to think of something long term. How long did it take to fix the Dutch Navy after it? Honestly, the Dutch Navy never recovers from the Batavian Republic. The Dutch Navy never recovers. They'd recovered quite well. They were a fairly strong navy, not massive navy. They didn't have the infrastructure they needed to have the large navy, but they were too weak. They were never able to recover and never given the investment. At several points, the Dutch produced interesting designs, like their submarines, etc. in the 1920s and 30s. They produced some very good designs. They just never produced enough of them. See, Clarke, I disagree on that. Yeah. Again, I'm not saying I'm right on this. It's just my theory on how to fix things. How to fix things. Michael Cooch, did the Russians provide a naval squadron as well as the army, and did they get any share in the prizes? They didn't get any share of the prizes. They did provide some things as well, but they didn't take part in operations. But, you know, they did provide, you know, personnel and things. They were there. Hmm. Let's see. Let's see. Okay. Ooh. Wow. Leslie's having fun with the command prompts in Twitch. Plus, do you think the Dutch were in a no-win situation due to the location in Europe? Yes, they were. They really were. That is the issue. The Dutch are in a no-win situation because they have to have a large army to defend their quite large border. They have massive neighbours, and they also need a navy to defend their territories. So they are in a no-win situation. There is one scenario where their empire and they could have survived quite easily, and that's if William of Orange and Mary had actually had a child and had managed to unite the crowns. That might sound weird, but let me explain that. If you united the Dutch and the English or the British crown under the House of Orange, and managed to keep it going, so that when they sort of similar to the Act of Union, you'd eventually have an Act of Union whereby the Dutch end up and the British end up combining. Probably with London as its capital, because let's be honest, which is safer as a capital city? That could have worked. Because then there's always a strategic reserve. There's always they have the safety. And that means the British can concentrate on providing the navy and extra troops. And the Dutch can concentrate on defending themselves and their empire secured. But that's the only chance they have of survival. Even then, with Bonaparte wandering around, they'd probably still have ended up occupied. Oh, Steve, yes, but as much as the trouble is, and the big problem for devolution, and it's one of the reasons why there's been so much focus on mayors in England rather than an English Parliament, is the moment you get an English Parliament, you get all sorts of problems. Because the thing is, when we look at the economy of the United Kingdom, it is overwhelmingly England, and it's actually overwhelmingly London and the South East. Let's be honest. There are lots of interesting bits going on, and you need the rest of the economy for it to work, certainly. And this is often misunderstood. But the economic pipeline of Britain, the big source of actual money that comes out at the end, is the South East and London. And a lot of stuff makes a lot of money, but it all feeds into that, and then it becomes the value added. And without the other stuff around it, it doesn't work. But without that, it ain't economically viable. And that's the whole problem. But the Welsh are happy with their assembly. Broadly speaking, whilst there are some who want more, there aren't many. And the Scots are... The Scots love an argument, they really do. And that's their problem. That's ultimately the problem. I love them dearly. One of the interesting things is that the amount of conversations I've been having recently about, oh, Britain now needs to massively rearm and we need to start cranking out this and that. And I sit there and go, you can't do it rapidly. You can't. We'd like to, but we can't. One of the big problems for Britain in that case. Why does it matter that the British warships are not built using largely British steel, supplied steel? Well, it means that unlike traditional times where Britain would have the ability to basically turn around to its domestic supplier and go, okay, prioritize our Navy's orders so we can get our ships into service, they can't do that. People go, well, that doesn't matter. We can just buy an order on an open market. The trouble is, the open market means it comes from other nations. And those other nations are turning around to their navies and their steel manufacturers and going, prioritize our orders. And are also demanding, and there's lots of others demanding it, so it's pushing up the price of steel, and it's making it more difficult for us to get it. So that's the problem. And that's one of a myriad of problems you have in terms of building what you need. Yeah, but a regional system in England also turns into issues, Steve. But we'll see what the mayoral system, we'll see how that works for a while, and we'll work out from that. No, Britain's biggest exports to America are cars, medicine, pharmaceutical products, mechanical power generators, including turbines, scientific instruments, components related to aircraft, chemicals, and various other goods. If we go to our trade data, the most recent one, I do apologise, is from 2023. That is the latest trade update, and that was released in January 2025. Our overwhelming supply to America is probably services. Basically, our business services account for, and various other services account for a huge amount, several hundred billion, a couple hundred billion of that, and we export to America roughly 60 billion of actual goods, mainly machinery and transport equipment. Yeah, steel is not really isn't really not far up there. Oh, there was a lot of interesting. Let me put it this way: the figures. Once you start looking at them from the British side and the American percentage of figures, it was very interesting as to what was counted as imports and not. And you start to wonder exactly who was compiling the list of import stuff. But we'll leave that to one side. That is definitely modern politics. And tonight we've been spending enough time dealing with Dutch politics of the 18th century. I'm sure I'll get more modern politics questions in Discord later. We can discuss devolution, that's fine in a civil way. I'm not going to be uncivil, I just think the problem with devolution in the UK, and especially in England, is it's been such an interconnected economy and system for so long that trying to divvy it up into regions is just going to cause issues. It's bad enough with the Barnett formula and poor Scotland, where they have the oil reserves, but let's be honest, the refineries are all mostly in England, where there's more flat land to actually do the refining of the fuel. And when does oil and gas have value? Is it when they come out of the ground or when they've been refined? So if they've been refined, there'll probably be a lot of modern politics on Sunday. I'm fairly certain the F-35 decision is going to come up quite a lot on Sunday. I have a feeling I'll be explaining that the F-35 procurement and talking about that a bit. The Dutch at this point, well, the Dutch did have some larger ships in their time, but at this point they're mostly a third-rate navy. There is a whole discussion of them, and there's a whole list of the things. The Dutch are really kind of limited normally to two-deckers. They did build the Spiegel, the Gutenlew, the Wit Oliphant, and the Dolphin, which were all three-deckers, but they're not that big, realistically. And yeah, they are mainly two-deckers, so they're mainly third rates are the biggest they realistically get. They do get some 1890 gun ships in 1810s, but again, they're two-deckers. They're two-deckers realistically. And most of them were reworked as 74s. It's just, yeah, they just have issues. They have issues with building bigger ships because their ports aren't designed infrastructure-wise, and the areas aren't designed to support it. '27, Anna. I spotted Anna's question. Thank you. Thanks, Paul, for spotting it for me. I got it in my list. Do the Dutch 74s and 68s have low deck commanders of 24 or 32 pounder? Depends on the ship, realistically. It depends on the ship. And that's annoying and sounds like a cop-out to say, but there is basically, if you go through, and one of the things I have up in front of me for this video, I honestly will admit, is the list of ships line of the Dutch Navy. And I have that because it's a useful list, it's a useful scenario to use to go through and check the Navy and check them, their ability. At this point, most of the ships you're dealing with are things like the William the Erst, which is armed with 36 pounders on the lower deck and 24 pounders on the upper gun deck. So, you know, they're mostly standard lines, standard vessels. 36 pounders lower deck, 24 pounders upper deck. They're fairly heavily armed for their size, but that's about what they can do. The Staten General is a good example again, that vessel which Story was aboard, which it withdrew after fighting HMS Venerable, Admiral Duncan's flagship. And yeah, she was found to be very much held wanting by when she fought Venerable. Venerable was a Culloden class ship of the line. She was armed with 28 32 pounders, 28 18 pounders, and 14 9 pounders, and well, no, 18 40 and 9 pounders, I think. And so she was a well armed vessel herself. Hello, I know, you want to go to bed. You've decided it's bedtime, but unfortunately no one's come to collect you yet. They're still letting you keep me company. And, you know, you get extra bickies for being here, and you look beautiful on camera, so all things good, aren't they, Big Fluff? All things good. I think I'm going to end up having to do an SDSR response video at some point, just to answer some of the questions coming. With Dr. Alex, so Steve, so Navy's post-war were not quite at the stage of uniform armament. Is that just down to weight distribution? Yes, it's one of those things of uniform armament. Again, it sounds so lovely, but it's weight distribution. You're not going to be doing that. You've not got the construction to do that. You put the heavier guns and lower the gun deck. Then you put your next guns up and next guns up. You thought the dog was snoring. No, that was him whining. He does that. He's not... That's what I call him when he's, how do I put this? Angry sleeping. I'm awake, but I'm angry sleeping. Because I've not been let to go to bed. You see, he spends his day with me, and his night is, you know, with Mum. And he has his timings. He's supposed to be picked up at 10 o'clock on the dot. And I know that. And he has to be with me by 10 a.m. in the morning. He's very fair. He does 12 hours with both. If he's not with me by 10 a.m., he's woofing and woofing and woofing away, complaining. If he's not been taken out, when I'm live, he does the angry whining. When I'm not live, when I'm just doing recordings, or I am, I don't know, just working away currently, then he woofs in here as well. So it's just missing his pork. Yes, it's pork pie time. Okay, it's pork pie time. This is a poodle. He has his priorities in order. What did the Royal Navy? What did the Royal Netherlands Navy learn from this incident? Don't have officers who have divided loyalties. It really doesn't work for you. Please don't have officers who have divided loyalties. It's really not sensible. It really isn't. But anyway, with that all being said, I'm going to do another roughly, till we've been live for about 3 hours, so it's about roughly another 9 minutes. And then I will call it a night, and I will be on Discord in about 20 minutes afterwards, because I'll go find out what's exactly happened to my family. I love them dearly, but I'll find out what's happened to them. I think something's happened to them, must have happened to them. Suppose I could check WhatsApp. That's all up to date. Nothing come through. Were they eaten by a grue? I don't think so. Wrong. I doubt they're watching TV. And I can honestly say the reason I doubt they're watching TV Night 6831 is at the moment, currently the TVs in the house aren't working because we've got to, it's been decided that they're going on new stands, new positions. So they're all currently down. The things arrive tomorrow. They'll be going up again tomorrow, but I had to get them down this evening, so none of them are working. I was told to do this. That could mean they've tried to do it themselves, but we will hope they haven't. We will sincerely hope they have not. Because that would just cause issues. You never know, but hopefully not. Because then that'll just be more issues for me to fix up. And, well, we won't hear the corgi woofing as the corgi had to have an operation. The corgis had to have... Cover your ears, Big Fluff. The corgi managed to... let's put it this way. He managed to necessitate, through actions to himself, removal of certain components. Which I hope he never realizes he's lost. For his sake. So the poor doggy is currently recovering from that. All I would say is it's not good being a low rider. Oh, he'll know. Please, he will know. Yes, I know he'll know. Alex, from Hong a couple of linked questions here. Do you know what happened to the Skern Totem from HMS New Zealand? Would the Malta-class carrier have been given the same items? Yes, they would have been given it. Do we know? I've written an article about it somewhere. I'm not sure if it's ever been published. I think I've got to edit some bits of it still. It's been waiting around for ages, so I would sort that out. Also, what would have happened if the Malta-class New Zealand had been as invincible as the battle cruiser? Then possibly she'd have single-handedly won the Cold War. I'm not sure. Nice way, we wouldn't have really known because she'd have to survive till the Falklands War to be actively being shot at. Yes, Steve, but I'm not saying that out loud in case the poodle gets upset by it, because the poodle is, in the nicest way, our rule was always not to, because it's better for the health, and we can manage them. And honestly, we've never had any trouble. We've all often than not had a pair of boys as dogs, and this is the first one we've ever had to have that done to. And it was literally a conversation of, is there any other way? No. You sure? No. Can we try an injection first? No. You absolutely sure? Yes. Ow! Not where British carrier. Well, that's why the Korean War. Technically, there's some shooting, so she could have got involved in shore bombardment like Unicorn, but it's unlikely. It's unlikely in nicest way the Maltas would have been ready for 1950, because they'd have been slow walked to death to build for the building process, like the Audaciouses. And you know, when are they actively shooting missiles and things at British aircraft carriers? The Suez Crisis? No. The Egyptians don't do it. They don't get anything off at that point to attack the carriers. So it's only going to be the Falklands War. They have been preserved. I think I'm not sure where they are though, but I think there's a place where they are. I think I have a note somewhere. The thing is, and I say this with New Zealand, HMS New Zealand in mind. That's another reason why I think the 12-inch gun battle cruisers were in many ways the perfect ships for that role for the Dominions to have out in their squadrons, because they were coal powered, which most of them could support and sustain. They were 12-inch guns. They were fairly simple to maintain, fairly simple to organise. Those ships could have been supported by the Dominions. A good thing to grow their fleets around. Once you start getting on the bigger assets, there are problems. Anyway, with that all being said, thank you again to Wade for the very, very kind donation of memberships. I think they're all supporter level as well. So thank you. There are 3 levels of membership. I think there's... I'm trying to remember this now, because I set this up the other day. I was working on it and going through the memberships, because we were working things through, and I tend to adopt these things earlier and try and see what they can do and what can happen, and then the rest of my colleagues tend to use them. We have... In terms of memberships... We have cadets, supporters, and leading supporters. Which is fun. Those are the 2 groups. We have no cadets currently. We have a couple leading supporters, so thank you to those leading supporters. I should be able to find out who they are and be able to say hello. I should say hello to all the supporters and leading supporters, I suppose. I will do a video and say thank you to all of you. It's so nice. I'm never quite sure what to do as the memberships, because most of the things which the YouTube stress of memberships are stuff which also Patreon does, and it's a case of, okay, which one do I go with? Do I make this a membership thing, or do I make it a Patreon thing? Oh, hello. Strap Hanger, hello. Sage, Dactor 20, Duke 42, Dan Freeman, Jack Ray, Agnes Aegis Flo, and Paul Amos and all the others. Peter Underhill, oh good lord. And I do hate this system. It keeps, every time I'm in a position to say thank you to people, it just keeps going around. So thank you to all members. It does, it's still strange. It's going to sound strange. It's such a nice way, but it is weird as a naval historian and as someone who's come from the background I did of, I thought I was going the academic career and all these things, to find myself in this situation and just going, this is the life and this works better for me, and I never saw this coming. It is weird. We could set up different channels on Discord for the free platforms. I might do that. There are 3 different levels. There's Cadet, which is... Well, when YouTube first established, right, it didn't work out well to have... the advice was always to go for $6.99, $10.99, or $18.99 for your memberships. And I didn't like that, so I went for $4.99 and $8.99, which was about the lowest you could go at the time. About lowest, and it said was advisable. And now they have a 99p option. And so I have a 99p option, I have a $4.99 option, and I have an $8.99 option. And the thing is, I can't adjust the existing $4.99 and $8.99 ones. $4.99 and $8.99 ones. Because the moment you can only delete them, and then people have to renew and sort themselves out. So I'd technically be terminating people's memberships, and I don't like the thought of doing that to people. Because that sounds wrong to me. So I basically just leave them as they are. And I added a 99p one, so there's a cadet level, because I thought it'd be fun to have. And also because it's going to sound strange. Currently, I suppose 5 were added today by Wade, so probably I am 23 members short of the next emoji having to design a next emoji. Fun times. Anyway, I'd better go check and see what the girls are up to and see what sort of things are going on. So, questions are now no longer live. I will hopefully have had the bot managed to sort the bot by the time we get to next week and Sunday. And we have Admiral Duncan on Tuesday. I hope you're all looking forward to that. We've got lots of videos packed in for tomorrow, for Saturday. They're all uploaded. They are all going to be premieres. There's also tomorrow after the premiere is probably going to be a Pirates of the Burning Sea time. So thank you very much, everyone. Right, I will sort out and make sure you can get to your bed now and your pork pie. I know how important they are. And then I will come back here and be on Discord, okay? All right, is that okay? All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Take care. Hope to see many of you in Discord if possible, and have fun. Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting.